Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome or welcome back, as the case might be. My name is Dalibor Petrovic. I'm a partner at Deloitte. Today is July 16th, 2024. Welcome to the next episode of our Tectonic Conversations, a series of live webcasts that we are producing and delivering to you to touch on topics that are relevant for enterprise technologists, people curious about technology leadership. As many of you would know, we've been putting this show on for a number of years. And today, I'm absolutely thrilled to have what perhaps we should think as chapter two in our storytelling for technology executives series of conversations. I'm thrilled to be joined, welcome back, my brother from another mother, Mike Bechtel. Mike,
How's it
lovely to
going,
see
buddy?
you again. Welcome back.
Oh, Delaware. Well, it's good. It's great to be welcome back. Hello from somewhat sunny Silicon Valley.
Silicon Valley, California. Mike, you probably don't need an introduction to most of our audiences, but for those who are joining us for the first time, Mike has the coolest title of all 500,000 Deloitters around the world. Mike is our global chief futurist, um, and an exceptional leader and storyteller himself. So welcome, Mike. Today's session, this is actually a live program. So we intentionally do this live to give you, the audience members, an opportunity to chime in. So if you have any questions or comments throughout the show, please feel free to use the Q&A function of this Zoom platform. We will also record this session and make it available to you afterwards. What are we going to be talking about today? Today is going to be the day we're going to explore fiction as a powerful vehicle to create business value. Fiction, of course, as an element of storytelling, which is the session that Mike and I delivered a couple of weeks ago. So with that, Mike, thank you again. I hope you're doing great. I hope you're ready to rock and roll. I'll pass
I'm
the baton over to you.
I'm ready, bud. Well, Dalibor and folks, thanks for making time today. Um, Again, where are we in this movie? If you're joining just for this one, if you're coming in hot here, you're still gonna have a great time. Hope to give you a lot of value. If you're a regular, you'll remember a couple sessions ago we talked about 10 tips for telling tales, sort of Jedi level planning, delivery, rhetorical techniques that can help business leaders and technology leaders, right, communicate their technical takeaways to regular civilians, or as I like to call it, wizardry for muggles. Well, today we're going to kick things up a notch, and here is the radical, provocative, dare I say, contrarian thesis. Because if I'm you, I look at this and I think this guy's jumped the shark a little bit. This is where we officially get a bit crazy. But that's a feature, not a bug. Okay? This is a session where I'm going to teach you a little bit about the interesting business utility resident in fictional stories, aka made up stuff. Okay? Now, this isn't some dark arts license to not let truth get in the way of a good story. This isn't about weird manipulation, insincerity, anything like that. This is a set of remarks that I debuted at South by Southwest this past March, a keynote where I had the privilege of following, yikes, good old Ray Kurzweil on the main stage talking about sort of technology futures. And after Ray talked about the singularity, it being nearer than ever, I really felt like my job was to talk about the centrality of humans in all of this. And I think in my bones that storytelling is a central piece of what makes us human, and that it might in fact be the OG information technology. So folks, ready to rock? Dalibor, you good to go, brother?
Let's
All
boogie.
right. Okay. So folks, this is my mom. This is good old Mary Jo Bechtel, born in 1947, passed away 1 year ago. We lost mom in August. And mom Mom loved stories. She was a storyteller, and she had the best laugh. And whenever you'd get together with good old MJB, as the extended family called her, you knew you were in for a good time. And, when she passed, this was her house. It was 1,150 square feet of fury in Evergreen Park, Illinois. It's a bomb shelter. Not literally, but if that were coming, you could do worse than 1952 Chicago Southside construction. Anyway, we're going through her stuff. And what did we find? Well, if I'm being honest, we found stories, right? I mean, here was a little mini me, right? Probably, I don't know, 4-ish, maybe 3. Dreaming of the future from the jump, right? And there's even littler me with MJB living my best life up in Hayward, Wisconsin. Here's even littler me with my dad. This is Edwin Bechtel. I don't know that this would pass as parenting in 2024. It's a little problematic, but you gotta love to look at my face. Like, check this guy out. He's got a fire stick. Anyway, as we're going through all these pictures and we're coming to terms with everything, what's funny is, like, some of them are profound. Some of them are borderline profane, like Dad with the smokes. But a lot of them are just kind of like prosaic, which is a nerd word for slice of life, everyday nothing. And here's me engaging in everyday nothing, and specifically, Dalibor, I know we had different childhoods on different corners of the globe, but remember when TVs were like 5 times the size of an adult, let alone a small child?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. We were the original remote controllers. You remember that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I worry about my kids' like screen time today, and I look at this picture, I'm thinking, what a hypocrite I am. Look at this guy. But a lot of my childhood was engaged in stories, right? Watching, narrative fictional shows, just like anybody else, and chief among them, and this is actual real artwork saved in my mom's basement because, again, storyteller, she kept it all. I was watching stuff like Star Wars, right? That's my original Darth Vader. Watching stuff like Star Trek, there's my original Enterprise. Transformers started to loom large at one point. And I share all this so as to say, I didn't just watch it all. I felt like I wanted to make it too. I remember, Dalibor, I was 11, and we had an art class where we had an opportunity to write a book, to make up stories. And I thought, yeah, I'll make a story. And the story I made was called Marty the Martian's Day in Space. And it was super fun, right? Like here's a little tour. Marty the Martian was looking for fun. Yes. He flew his dad's spaceship up to the sun. The temperature grew warmer the closer he got. Forget this place, it's much too hot. Well, you can imagine, I'm pretty proud of myself, right? I'm thinking,
Artist
look,
and the poet.
right. That's right. I mean, it was the early days of hip hop, but you can smell that Run DMC rhythmic signature in the stylings. But I'm thinking, okay, I love to write stories, but again, you'll notice it's science fiction stories, right? Like space and technology and the future. Okay, cool. Well, I figured I'd try my hand at actual science, and in what might be the world's worst elementary school science project, in an effort to prove the existence of black holes, Dalibor, I put a black garbage bag in a macrame hoop. Mm-hmm. I put marbles on the edge of the macrame hoop, supported by 2 chairs in our dining room, and observed the marbles' behavior for a month. And per the emoji erupting in the chat, I'll tell you, yes, this is dubious squared. But I'll tell you, let the record reflect, 6 marbles fell in the bag. Mm-hmm. 3 did not. 1 just disappeared. And, we weren't accounting for exogenous variables like the dog. Mm. But I'm here to tell you that in an effort to turn from science fiction to science, my 7th grade science teacher would go on to tell me, when he met me when I started junior high. He's like, are you the black hole macrame kid? I go, yeah. He goes, yeah, that stuff's not going to fly in junior high, guy. You got to up your game. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, oh man. Okay, so I'm good at the stories, but maybe not the science. Well, fast forward. It's eighth grade. We're graduating, right? We're declaring what we want to be when we grow up. And there I am. I'm going to this whiz-bang high school, Morgan Park Academy, and my ambition is to be both an entertainer and a computer engineer. Because I couldn't make up my mind. I'm like, oh, I don't know, one or the other. Why not both?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when you're 13, that feels reasonable. Yeah, I'll double dip in that. But somewhere along our career, we feel like they're exclusive. Like you have to be a professional or a communicator entertainer, right? Did you feel that ever, Dalibor? Because you've got a lot of charisma yourself, brother. Like, did you ever feel like you had to pick one?
Absolutely, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I think that the sense was that you should not be the entertainer if you want to be taken seriously as a scientist, right?
Right.
This is actually, yeah, I completely empathize with this. I had a similar mindset, you know, living my childhood back home in Yugoslavia at the time. But absolutely, and these are actually seen as opposites, right?
Right. In Finland,
Who would have thought that the secret to success in 2024 for tech executives would be to bring these together, right?
well, brother, 1,000%. And for those of you who are, you know, playing at home and living this right now, I'll tell you, in an age of AI, and we'll get there, but an age of hyper specialized classical IQ intelligence, cross-pollination is going to be increasingly key, and breadth, we're finding as a team, is starting to rear its head as the new depth, right? So a little teaser for where we're headed, gang. But at the time, this felt like a dichotomy, right? And for some of you who know our series, right, we're going to be having a session on this Thursday, and I'll share the link with y'all. But it felt like a one or the other. Just like you said, right, Dalibor? Like pick one,
Yeah.
right? Not half both. And it really tortured me. I mean, look at high school me, right? Alternative grunge musician with a conservative haircut you could bring home to mother, right? Like this is a kid who was trying to have it both ways. And when I went to college, I remember freshman year in college, I'm sitting there with my freshman guidance counselor, and you know, I grew up, again, you saw the house, right? So, you know, working class kid. I didn't have rich aunts and uncles guiding me professionally. I had the public defender of sorts, which was the college guidance counselor, and he says, listen, English majors typically go to grad school, it costs about 30 grand a year. Engineers typically go to get jobs. Those make 30, 40 grand a year. And I thought, well, okay, that's about as clear as I've ever heard it said. I'm going to go do that. And I did. And Dalibor, I hated it. Because what I found was that, as you said, that linear sort of black or white, right or wrong, convergent engineering without any charisma, chutzpah, or storytelling behind it at all, it just didn't fill my cup. And I made a switch. I said, well, I've heard that lawyers can make money, and I'll tell you, those pre-law government classes, if engineering felt too cold, law felt too hot, like Goldilocks. Like, oh man, this isn't good either. These people like yelling at each other for a living. You know, see politics, comma, America 24, right? So now I'm feeling really stuck. Like, how do I have this cake and eat it too? And what I realized was that my people had been hiding in plain sight all along. I looked out the window one day, buddy. I saw people playing ultimate frisbee with long hippie haircuts. And I remember asking a friend, what do you think those kids major in? And he looks at me, he goes, I'm pretty sure it's something called anthropology. And it was. And I ran into that as a double major quicker than you could say lickety split. Why? Because I loved the topicality, right? I had long hair myself. I was a full-blown hippie by this point. But two, there was this girl in the class that actually tragically had the same haircut as me, brother. And I'm here to tell you that she wore it better, but we're still happily married 24 years later as of yesterday.
Bravo.
And I couldn't tell you. Folks, thus concludes the value prop for an anthropology undergraduate degree. But why does it matter for us as professionals, as technologists, and as business leaders? Let's get to it. It's another dearly departed instrumental figure in my life. This is a fellow named Professor Jim Bellis. Jim was a physical anthropologist. He studied human evolution and artifacts, an archaeologist, right? Professor Bellis taught me more about technology than any technology course or professional learning session I've ever had in my life. Specifically, I remember he taught us about a precursor to Homo sapiens called Homo habilis. Homo habilis, or handyman, they were them because they had built stone tools, right, to hunt and kill and prepare their food. Why? Because it was a hack. It freed precious human cycles to focus on higher order pursuits, right? Because once you can hunt and catch and prepare and cook your food quicker, you've got something called free time, which, 10,000 years ago is a big deal. So what do you get busy with? Well, if you're the Sumerians, you invent something called written language. Now, what's that good for? Well, if stone tools help free your time from, spending 23 hours a day chasing the elk, written language frees you from spending 10 hours of your day literally memorizing everything and having to literally repeat yourself to every gosh darn person. It was a hack. The printing press was a hack that freed precious human time from having to copy everything over and over and over again, right? It was the OG Control-C, Control-V.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing a speech by Bill Jobs, and I'll give you the verbal rendition, unless the audio works. Let's see if it does. Dalibor, can you hear Steve Jobs here?
I remember.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, I'll go ahead and play it, gang. Who am I to paraphrase Steve Jobs?
Reading an article when I was about 12 years old, I think it might have been in Scientific American, where they measured the efficiency of locomotion for all these species on planet Earth. How many kilocalories did they expend to get from point A to point B? And the condor one came in at the top of the list, surpassed everything else. And humans came in about a third of the way down the list, which was not such a great showing for the crown of creation. And but somebody there had the imagination to test the efficiency of a human riding a bicycle. Human riding a bicycle blew away the condor, all the way off the top of the list. And it made a really big impression on me that we humans are tool builders, and that we can fashion tools that amplify these inherent abilities that we have to spectacular magnitudes. And so for me, a computer has always been a bicycle of the mind, something that takes us far beyond our inherent abilities. And I think we're just at the early stages of this tool.
Yeah.
Dalibor, I get literal goosebumps when I see it, right? I mean, Steve Jobs, complicated, problematic guy in a lot of respects, but like that's the stuff, right? And I remember those of you who've seen our brief history of the future research talking about Babbage and Lovelace in the 1840s, right? That was the original bicycle for the mind. I grew up in a part of the history of technology where the World Wide Web was a hack for collaboration and communication. It was the ability to replace singular experts with sufficient numbers of qualified amateurs, crowdsourcing, right? Harvesting, is that movie any good? I don't know. Ask IMDb, right? And then, of course, today, AI, right? A rocket ship for the mind. Well, where am I going with this? Fast forward, it's 2021, and my team at Deloitte, we call ourselves Next, Novel and Exponential Technologies. We're contracted by the World Economic Forum, and contract is the wrong word, partnered, approached, teaming. Say, hey, you guys seem to have a handle on where all this emerging tech is going. Can you explain it to our global business leader audience? We said, you betcha. And as we start to pitch our approach, right, we start to share this work that, frankly, is inspired by Professor Bellis, right? This idea that to understand novelty requires that you be a historian, that you look back to make sense of what's next, and that is how we can separate the kind of ephemera from the eternities. And we shared that to this group of Swiss executives, and they liked it. We said, okay, good, we're out, it's a good thesis, good project approach. And then what we said, well, we can do one better. Because if we can show where these technologies are converging, right, we can interpolate, not quite extrapolate, like interpolate the likely next generation technologies that will stand between today and tomorrow. And when we shared that with the room, they said, this is great. And I'll never forget this guy, Klaus, he looks at us, he goes, but will there be case studies? And I said, well, Klaus, definitionally, this is the future. And so, like, QED, ergo, no, because they don't exist yet.
Yeah.
And he just looks at us, he goes, but the readers really like the case studies. And I go, well, Klaus, absent time travel, I don't know what to tell you. And then I had this epiphany, right? Like tap dancing. Granted, this is all actually on Zoom, right? Like it was the core of the pandemic. But what am I going to say? What am I going to say? I go, we can engineer speculative case studies that deliver on the heart, the mind, the feeling, the mojo that people appreciate when they read a case study. But they'll be speculative. And he says, speculative? Like make-believe? Like fiction? I go, yeah, we've got some experience doing this. I myself have done fiction since I was 10. And you could only imagine, they're like, where is this going? But here's the thing, team. We leaned into it because we knew in our hearts it was the right idea. Our team started creating these narratives, fictional narratives, case studies from the future. In this case, we could talk about augmented and virtual reality, spatial computing, and unlimited reality until you're blue in the face. Mm-hmm. Like the picture of this lady here. I'm sure that wasn't Freudian. But if you just write a short story about somebody like, I'm in a tunnel speeding down a water slide on an inner tube, but wait a minute, it's actually a platelet. I'm inside an artery. You're like, wow, I guess AR for education is cooler than I thought it was. Why? Because for 2 million years, since stone tools and Sumerian written language and bicycles for the mind, the OG IT is storytelling. And the way to get people to not just think in the abstract about the future is not, my friends, a white paper, right? They'll start it, they'll doze off, and they'll, it just won't work. So what do? You augment the risk research with the storytelling to get people engaged so they can feel the future. Here was Frank, right? We were talking about AI in early 21, about a chief algorithms officer who accidentally gave a then novel concept called a generative AI the ability to run roughshod over payroll, and the robot accidentally gives pay cuts to a third of the team. Now, this isn't me saying, told you Gen AI would be a thing. Rather, it was me saying people who read this got out in front of that. They're like, whoa, I bet trust and ethics and governance and bias detection is going to frickin' matter. And in my heart, Dalibor, I'm not sure people would have gotten to the aha if they hadn't spent time reading about Frank's foibles here. Have you seen this, pal? Have you seen that even if they're illustrative, even if they're fictional, 4 examples are the key to real understanding in a business context or a boardroom?
100%, especially as you suggest, for circumstances where what we are trying to position is in the future. So we do not have a reference point yet, right? Absolutely. I can see clearly how telling stories, these fictional stories of likelihoods, are actually almost like case studies in reverse, like they're forward-looking case studies, right? And they would generate the emotion of the listener. They would put you in. They would put us, I think, mindset. They will put us inside the story.
Yep.
So we would feel the story, because this is who we are as species, right? We tell each other stories. That's how we form bonds, right? So
Yeah. I heard a quote. I don't know who said it, but gosh, I love it. It's great stories happen to those who can tell them, right?
oh my God, that's so
Like it-
brilliant.
it's good, right? And we'll find the source. Somebody in chat, not to task our beloved audience,
Oh, I'm
but
going to write this down now.
right. Great stories happen to those who can tell them. I mean, there were two versions of my evening yesterday, right, bud? There was, we had turbulence on the tarmac, and then there were 10 tornadoes in Chicago, and one of them was right near our plane, and oh my God, and it was a thing. And that happened to be a true story, and I'm fine. We're all fine. But great stories happen to those who can tell them, so by all means, tell them. So team, moving right along, we did 4 such speculative case studies, aka make-believe fiction, for a World Economic Forum report that was being approved by Swiss executives. And so you can imagine there was a great deal of risk, but there was a great deal of reward. We shared this stuff with the team. They loved it. It ended up being their most read flagship report of that whole year, in large part because it had the intellectual heft, it had the crunch, but it also had some stuff you could grab and actually lean into and like. And not just like, but find utility in, as we've discussed. And again, the whole thing was on Zoom. So folks, getting to, I think, the kind of the middle of the sandwich on this.
Yeah.
The first thing I would tell you is, if you haven't taken this already, stories are the original information technology. Okay? The original technology was a stone tool, right? But the original information technology, storytelling. Or if we want to be more buttoned up, right? If your boss looks at you like you have 6 heads, if you say, I want to be a storyteller, say you want to focus on narrative competence.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more professional. The reason this works, right? We talked about this last session, right? If I want to communicate something to my buddy Dalibor, right? Absent a brain-computer interface where I can Control-C, Control-V that richness into his head, right? I've got to settle for storytelling. I've got to settle for communicative intent through nouns and verbs and all the rest of it. And in this age, we talked about last session, the number one takeaway in the notes was you love the term weapons of mass distraction.
Yeah.
In an age of weapons of mass distraction, right? This is the reason so many projects struggle. This is the reason so many outputs don't match the design, right? And so I would tell you, the OGIT, storytelling, right? We know that matters. We've been there. Today, right? Today, what we're really banging on is this idea that they don't even have to be real. They can be fictional. They can be engineered to deliver the key takeaway that you want your audience to reflect on and think about, because as we know, sometimes, right? Sometimes that's how you get to the truth under the truth. With our World Economic Forum work, right? Super straight talk, right? There's 3 ways to persuade an audience. Aristotle called this the Aristotelian triangle. Actually, he probably just called it my triangle. We call it the Aristotelian triangle. But here's how it works. You win people over with logic, the white paper stuff, the math, right? Yeah, looks smart, checks out, right? The problem, of course, is people doze off. The second thing you use to persuade is ethos or credibility. Well, it's not just any math. It's math brought to you by Deloitte and the World Economic Forum, right? It's credible math, right? Trust these two. They're professionals. And what I found, right, is if you lean too hard into that, people are like, okay, you've got my attention. It doesn't mean I love it. It's that pathos side that I think we in business too often forget. The storytelling, the heart activating, right? That's where it all comes together and you properly blow minds. I remember in high school, I'm reading Animal Farm by George Orwell. I bring it home. I bring it home to my mom and I'm like, Mom, check this line out, right? All animals are created equally, but some are more equal than others. Hot! And my mom goes, you know that's not about animals, right? It was fiction as a gateway to get the attention of a teen who would rather not spend his free time reading about, right, the Bolshevik Revolution.
Yeah.
Okay. My mom's very favorite story, The Wizard of Oz, right? I remember coming running home from school one day. I'm like, Mom, did you know we learned, kind of like you did with Animal Farm, that The Wizard of Oz actually isn't a story about yellow brick roads and ruby slippers or any of this. It's a critical assessment of the U.S.'s adherence to the gold standard, right? And Heart, Brains, and Courage are actually references to politicians and their values back in the 1913, And my mom's like, don't ruin it for me. I think the takeaway, right, is that there's usefulness in fiction. We've established that. Now, speculative fiction, science fiction, future fiction, there's something uniquely instructive and helpful about this too. And it works like this. Science fiction, spec fiction, future fiction is a Trojan horse for today's most pressing issues. Remember, I said I used to love Star Trek, and boy, did I, right? And when I was small, it was all about the ships and the phasers and all that. And I mean, nerd alert, right? Nothing like still owning a technical manual for the Enterprise D that's all fake. You want to know how the transporter works? You come to find me. I'll tell you the whole situation. Thank you, Michael Okuda.
Oh, God.
But as I got older, what I started to realize was what's really going on in Star Trek is that they were using like space as a safe space to talk about sticky, icky, touchy subjects in the 1960s. Star Trek was the first interracial kiss on television. Star Trek had this bonkers notion that the Russians are our friends. And now there's these things called Klingons, and they're like the new Russians. But see, Chekhov, he's on our side. And you're watching this in 1966, and you're like, oh, wow, look at, it's like the United Colors of Benetton up there. And it's a blessing in disguise, because if you were to have a show that was, as we say in the literary field, on the nose, people would reject it as being overtly political. But it's up in space, and it's in the 22nd century, and so what's not to like, right? All good spec fiction does this. Orwell, 1984, was teaching us about surveillance and cybersecurity, about hegemony and groupthink before we knew what we were in for. Dune is all the rage, and my son is like, have you seen Dune? It's amazing. And they're riding these worms. And I'm like, just like my mom, I'm like, that's not really about spice in Arrakis, right, dude? Like, that's like oil in the Middle East. He's like, wow, because it's about ecology and resource stewardship and, living with the land, right? Neuromancer, William Gibson, we always say the future's already here, not evenly distributed. That's from that book, right? That was about cyberspace, people being over-reliant on screens and machines, corporate overreach, the whole 9 yards. Whoa! And then Parable of the Sower, probably the least known of these four. Check it out. Written by an African-American woman named Octavia Butler back in the 90s about the role of philosophy, theology, and ecology in a tech-driven future. Unbelievable book. One of my faves. Right? We use tools like this to actually inform our work. Right? I remember reading The Diamond Age by Neil Stephenson, and it inspired our development of a tool that helped preschoolers have an interface that would whip up Wikipedia entries, Amazon previews, and Google Images in real time in the classroom. It's back when I worked at a not-for-profit. Why? In large part because I got the idea from a book. Team, bringing it home. Right, landing the plane, I would tell you. And then we're going to have plenty of time for Q&A, right? Plenty of time. Is that, to me, what this all means is that humans need to be at the middle, front and center in all of this tech-driven, artificially intelligent madness. We're going to need naturally intelligent people. A lot of the work we've been doing around the world, a lot of the work that's getting traction, is our somewhat contrarian notion to market, right, Dalibor, that in an age of intelligent machines, celebrate your intelligent people.
Yeah.
Right? Some of y'all remember that story that I've told in multiple forums here, with Dalibor, where we asked an uninspired executive to dream up a use for an image diffusion tool. He says, paint me a sunset. And you get, what do you get? You get a mediocre sunset. his chief of staff says, I want to see Cheetos versus pretzels in a fight, and I want the Cheetos with nunchucks and the pretzels with squirt guns, and the whole thing's on Mars, and everybody's clapping, saying, look at the power of technology. We should celebrate the power of the lady who thought to think of such a thing.
That's right.
Right? It used to be garbage in, garbage out, gang. But where we're headed right now, right, and I think Jobs would agree if he were here, is that it's garbage in, garbage squared. Right? But on the flip side, it's genius in, genius squared. Like, we can take good to great, baby. Right? We really, really can. And some people look at this as a dichotomy. Right? Some people look at it as just like, I believe AI is evil. It's a hero. It's a villain. Hero. Villain. Nope. Right? Yeah. Reject the extremes because it's both at the same time, gang. Yeah. Our future is about people to the power of our tools. It has been since the stone flakes and the written language and the printing press. The example I've been giving lately to our clients, it kind of works like this, buddy. You know, let's say that the tool du jour is fire, right? You could use fire mindfully. You could cook your dinner. You could use fire maliciously. You could, burn your neighbor's house down. And then if you had a whoopsie, a mindless use of fire, you could light your thumb on fire, or God knows what. Now you substitute fire with fission. Okay, now I can either cook every meal in the neighborhood with the local reactor. That's cool. I could blow up every home in somebody else's neighborhood, and that's a different kind of fission. And then mindlessly, you could have an accident, and that's called fallout.
Yeah, fallout. Yeah.
But the takeaway, gang, is these tools are force multipliers for our ambitions. If we've got great ambitions, we're going to create magic. If we've got evil, mustache-twisting cartoon villain ambitions, we're going to create mayhem. And I think the big thing here, Dalibor, and the reason I'm on this little side sermon, is that it's that orange line in the middle that's actually the worry wart. Because here at Deloitte, right, we've got cybersecurity and Department of Defense, like experts and professionals who are looking out for the bad guys.
Yeah.
But it's the knuckleheadery in the middle that actually figures to be the most dangerous. It's mindlessness metastasized that makes for the mess. And so what we do as a team is we purposely write speculative fiction series on merging technologies that purposely show what might go right and what might go wrong, right? What could go green and what could break orange and red. Dalibor, you were kind enough to host us, 6 months back, we talked about biometrics.
Yes.
The concern and the allure, the dystopia, utopia. We talked about generative AI a few months back, and this Thursday,
yes,
right, we're going to be unveiling our spatial computing, right,
on
issue.
This channel.
On this channel. And folks, take a photo of that bad boy. That's the registration for Thursday. This time, same time, this time, 2 days from now. My teammates Abhijit, Angela, and perhaps Sarah. I don't remember who's all joined in the band, but I know that the band is all here, and we're going to be sharing with you what could go right and what could go south with spatial. Dalibor, I'll take a quick breath here and let you maybe reflect and opine, because that was a whole lot of.
Oh, this was fantastic. I think that so. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for walking us through this. I think it is actually really important. We know that technology leaders, one of the biggest challenges that we have as technology leaders is ability to articulate and tell the stories that will influence our colleagues who are not technologists, and help them understand the opportunity, help them understand the risk. And I think this is really a fantastic addition to the arsenal that we've been discussing through this programming over the course of number of years. Really, this is an important arsenal in the toolkit. So what you're suggesting really is that a very effective way for a leader to pass on the message is to take their colleagues onto a journey. And if we're talking about technology futures, that journey has to be speculative fiction. But what a magnificent tool at the disposal of technology leader to forward play use cases, right? To make the use cases of the future feel like they're real, right?
Oh man.
So it's really good. It's wonderful addition to our toolkit. Mike, there are a number of questions that came through the conversation from the audience.
Sure, bro.
I'm going to start with a relatively tactical one.
Mhm.
There is a recognition that storytelling is becoming ever more important skill, especially for technology leaders, for those of us who are, as you opened up, a scientific minds, engineering minds, who are not naturally, natively, skilled or comfortable with storytelling. But here is a
Mhm.
question that came through. How do employees become better storytellers? Do you have any thoughts on how should people practice this art to become better storytellers?
Yeah.
And how could companies evaluate and recognize the capability of storytelling within their people?
Right. You know, I can give my own hunches and maybe lived experience, pal.
Yeah.
But I'd welcome your thoughts too, and I know we have some really focused professionals around the globe here at Deloitte who are all in on this as their focus. But for me, I use the term singer-songwriter in the back of my head when I deliver the following advice, and that is, there's a tendency in corporate environments where the strategist makes the strategy, the copywriter puts it into plain language, the designer makes it pretty on a page, and then the executive reads it off the teleprompter. And that supply chain results in a lack of, I think, clarity and authenticity and realness. It feels like AstroTurf and not grassroots. And so I would encourage in that example that said strategist, why don't you communicate that strategy? Tell that story, right? Make your own gasp PowerPoint or keynote, deck that might not be the best looking thing in the world and might not be perfectly brand compliant, but that feels like it's by you, of you, right? By people, for people. I think we are the heroes we're looking for.
Yeah.
And owning our own narratives, I think, is a big first step. What have you seen, Dalibor, as like a way,
Well,
like maybe at the grassroots level to promulgate this?
yeah, I would say, like, at the end of the day, the recipe is the same as the recipe of how do you get to Carnegie Hall, right? You practice, practice, and practice.
Right.
So I think there is an element of getting better as you practice more of that storytelling.
Yeah.
There is help around. Toastmasters, for example, is a very well-known and established organization that it essentially exists to help connect people and allow them to practice their public speaking skills, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, there are organizations that specialize in helping leaders design, construct, and deliver powerful stories, right? If you're following, TED Talks, for example, TED Talks have established themselves as, probably the most well-known platform to deliver powerful, inspirational stories in what is it, 12 minutes or 18 minutes, right?
Yep.
All of those speakers are coached. All of those speakers are coached to help
Yeah.
them construct a story, to help them understand the arc, to help them deliver, to help them with the pauses, right?
Yeah.
To help them with this art, Mike, that you unveiled to us in our previous session, which, by the way, is also recorded and available for people to watch in these 10 steps. So I would say that there are methodologies that exist. This is well understood science. There are organizations who specialize in training executives how to deliver. But if that is not an option, there are Toastmasters clubs, probably in every city, that exist to help people tell better stories. And what we know is that this is becoming more and more important. as technology becomes more and more mysterious to those who are not technologists, right?
Yep.
So my encouragement is take every action you can to make yourself as powerful storyteller as you can. And there are resources available. That's what I would say, Mike.
I think it's great, bud. I thank you for that. What else we got? What else we got for questions, pal?
There's an interesting question from Namrata, and she's asking about, like, is corporate America savvy enough to recognize the importance of storytellers within their ranks?
I think Namrata, hello, by the way. Namrata, thank you for joining. Old friend. Some of you have heard me use that old Paul Graham quote that the best time to act, when you're dealing with an exponential is when it still feels too early.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the peril of working in futures where everything you're doing feels a little bit wacky and a little bit not ready for prime time. But what I would tell you is, I think corporate America recognizes the outcome. So I think selling storytelling as the supply side pitch might fail because it might feel like playtime, it might feel distracting, etc. I remember that great story, the great tale, anecdote, right? Like, companies don't buy shovels, right? They buy holes. And so you want to talk about the outcome. What does this shovel get me? An even better hole. I'm in, right? And so I think if you're talking about top line growth, customer connectedness, customer relationship management, if you lead with some of those terms and say, oh, how are you going to do better at that? Well, narrative competence, what the hell does that mean? We're high performing humans and storytellers. Yeah. They'll be like, oh, okay. So in my experience, you kind of back into it. Like, almost like this session, if I came in hot with this session 12 months ago, it would have felt triple crazy. But we've established dichotomies as a series. We've talked about 10 tips for telling tales. Now we can talk about fiction as a particularly useful part of that. I think you just got to ease your way in.
Yeah. And I actually think that like everyone will get to the point of recognizing the importance of human connections and storytelling and amplifying humans to the power of the tools. Everyone is going to arrive there as they understand that technology is going to be able to take care of all the specific things, and what we'll be left with is a human connection. So I think everyone will ultimately derive to that state. Those who are early will be, I think, picking up the ripest of fruits from that tree, right?
Darn tootin'. Yeah, that's for sure.
So there was another comment which is very, very actually beautiful here from Shrikant, and Shrikant mentions that in their team they're actually asking people to come up with 3 forward-looking speculative case study stories for anything that they plan to do, and they explain those stories to their team. So there are. That's another brilliant, beautiful idea. So there are obviously ways that people are taking advantage of this concept.
For sure. And in Dalibor, Shrikant at the tail end, he has a little question snuck in there, a little Trojan horse question in the bottom. He says, how can you make others into missionaries for this idea in a more local context than forums like this? A couple things. I would tell you that I've been as surprised as anyone that sessions on executive storytelling are as or maybe more in demand lately for my team and me than sessions on emerging tech, AI, tech trends, and futures writ large. And I share that loudly and proudly, like not with like concern about my quote unquote main job, because I think that what we're uncovering here, Shrikant, is a real latent demand for again this narrative competence. So I think workshops, like if you're doing here's an idea, one of many. If you find yourself in a meeting where you're having to do an icebreaker, right, or any one of these things that feels rote, like okay, 2 truths and a lie, oh god, right? Maybe turn that into a okay, everybody write a limerick about our new product, right? Something that tests creative competence and that flexes a bit of a muscle. I promise you, not only will you grow and develop, but you'll have a lot of laughs and you'll do a lot of bonding too.
That was excellent. Excellent. Anki asks, how do they stay connected? So, by the way, if you registered for this session, then you will be added to our list and you will be informed about all of the future sessions that we are putting on. By the way, these sessions are also all recorded. I think that we are all moving towards this, education through hour-long snippets on YouTube and other channels. Like this is going to be it's already normalized. But Mike, I think that you also have on your next team an ability to subscribe to your newsletter, right?
Yes. Let me find. Hastily searches for QR code. Hold on.
But we will be able to do that, and we'll. Do you have the QR code that we can share on the screen?
I do.
Excellent.
Bear with me, friends. Hold on. This is what that aforementioned authenticity looks like. Scrambles for a slide. Give me a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Abhijit has just actually sent the link.
Good man.
Yeah.
Thanks, Abhijit.
And is this QR code on the bottom right, the right QR
Yes.
code?
Yes. I mean, that's me grabbing the first one I saw, but I believe that signs you up for our Field Notes from the Future weekly Substack, which Abhijit fearlessly edits and curates.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you very much. Well, as always, I am both inspired and I learned, and I took a number of quotes from you that I'm going to put in my little quote bank. For our audience members, as you would have heard from Mike, 2 days from now on Thursday, 18th of July 2024, we will be doing the dichotomy session. So you will hear this speculative fiction example, both the allure and the danger. So please come back to see how this actually feels when it's done, might I say, really well. I look forward to seeing you. And with that, Mike, I want to thank you very much for your time. This was brilliant as always. And I look forward to seeing you in a couple of days. Have a safe travel, my friend.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for hosting. And everybody, thanks for hanging. Appreciate y'all.
And for our audience, have yourselves a lovely Tuesday, and you will receive the recording. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
See ya.
Bye.